Our State of the U.S. story. An investigative report was released by the New York Attorney General Letitia James just this morning, claiming that COVID-19 fatalities in New York nursing homes were underreported by as much as 50%. The 76-page report largely blames Governor Andrew Cuomo for poorly handling the coronavirus pandemic in his state and inaccurately reporting the death toll. Now, according to James's report, New York was the only state in the country not to report residents that died inside of hospitals. In addition, it found that some nursing homes were underreporting resident fatalities. Based on a survey of 62 nursing homes, James's report revealed that nursing home fatalities were underreported by as high as 56% in some cases, pushing the reported death toll from around 8,000 to over 13,000 approximately. 4,000 of these deaths followed the state's March 25th mandate to admit COVID-positive patients into nursing homes, which put already vulnerable residents at an increased risk. This report goes to show that Andrew Cuomo may not be as brilliant as he portrays himself to be in his new book about his leadership. With me now to discuss is the editor for the Daily Wire and host of the Ian Haworth Show. Welcome back, Ian.
Thank you, as always, for having me.
Great. So I'm not so much shocked by the tragic findings of this report as I am about the fact that the AG, who's really no friend of the right, went after the Democrats' golden boy. So what were some of your big takeaways from this report?
Well, I think firstly, as you mentioned before, this is just an admittance of reality. Like, we've known this for months upon months upon months while Andrew Cuomo has been joining his brother on CNN, laughing about his nostril size. They've been actively hiding numbers. And the goal there is to hide the fact that most of the bad impact of COVID is down to Democrat leadership, either at the state level or the city level. But now that Biden is in power, we're actually going to see a change where they're going to shift on some of their own to direct focus away from the federal level and then remind us all that it is, in fact, on the state and city level again. So when Trump was in power, it was all Trump's fault. Blood is on Trump's hands. Now Biden is in power, of course. We can't have that same logic. So now Andrew Cuomo is going to be one of those people to be thrown under the bus, at least temporarily.
That is a good point. And when we look back over 2020 and Cuomo's leadership, we saw, for example, when a lot of these COVID patients were being released back into the nursing homes to, unfortunately, to pass away, the state was sending with them body bags, and sometimes 3 or 4 body bags per each person being sent back to the nursing home. So to me, that's alarm bells right there that the administration of Cuomo, that they knew full well what this would do to these nursing homes. And of course, we saw the Navy hospital ship and the Javits Center. A lot of these centers were left mostly empty, and that's where a lot of these elderly residents could have been sent to protect them and to keep them safe. So do you think that this will have any long-term impact on Cuomo?
Probably not. I mean, Andrew Cuomo is one of those who's beloved by the media. I think it helps a lot, as I said, that Chris Cuomo is a prominent member of CNN. I just think it's funny that the only kind of, darkly funny, the only kind of efficiency we can get from any kind of Democratic leadership is sending body bags with people when they go into nursing homes. I mean, this is also what we had to understand here. This isn't limited to just Cuomo. I think there are a lot of conservatives who rightly criticize Cuomo at every opportunity. But let's not forget that this policy of sending COVID back into nursing homes occurred in multiple different Democrat-run cities and states. For example, Pennsylvania, with Dr. Rachel Levine now being named as the assistant head of the Department of Health. And so this is an ongoing problem. And so Andrew Cuomo, might get a bit of criticism now, but ultimately they'll start to focus on portraying Florida, for example, as the boogeyman of COVID, even though by most metrics, Florida is doing excellently well.
So we have Biden tapping Levine. We also had Biden at one point, he was thinking perhaps floating the idea of having Andrew Cuomo as his attorney general. So what does this say about Biden's overall policy agenda when it comes to COVID-19? Because I remember back on the campaign trail, every second he used to throw every single COVID death at President Trump's feet. And he said it's because President Trump didn't have a plan. He didn't have any cohesive plan for the nation. But then now just recently, about a week ago, we saw Biden saying nothing I can do for the next 3 months.
Well, it's just classic Biden, isn't it? I mean, this is really what he spent decades upon decades in government doing, is that he says what's needed at the time to either get into power or keep himself in power. When it came to Trump early on, he was criticizing Trump closing down flights. And then a few months later, he was saying that closing down flights was a good idea. He's now, of course, closed down flights from places like South Africa. So apparently that's not racist anymore, or xenophobic, as he would describe it. Biden doesn't really have a plan. That shouldn't shock anyone. Biden's plan originally was simply Trump's plan. And now Biden is being expected to stand on his own 2 feet. He's trying to remind us all that COVID is a global pandemic, and one elected official doesn't have the power or the ability, or frankly, the intelligence to do anything about it. So it's just standard Democratic Party goalpost moving.
And now we see that the Biden White House, they're in talks with Congress. They want to pass a $1.9 trillion, so almost another $2 trillion COVID relief bill. What do you think that the Biden administration, what should they actually be focusing on now? What should be their policy moving forward?
Well, really, their policy just needs to be focusing on the vaccine that, again, the Trump administration brought that everyone thought would never happen. The vaccine is going to be what really solves this problem in a lot of ways. I think increased lockdowns are going to have drastic economic impacts, which we've already seen. It's also going to have societal impacts, for example, suicide rates spiking in certain areas. And also we have to open up schools. And the fact that Biden announced that perhaps we should now consider opening up schools and some Democratic mayors and governors suddenly thought that was a good idea. The fact that we have allowed our children to be basically placed in solitary confinement in many ways in an educational sense is just shocking. That's one of the roles of the government that I think we can all agree on in terms of public schooling is it's an important for equality of opportunity to have every child having decent access or somewhat decent access to education. The fact that's just been put on pause for a year is despicable, and I think that we really need to be looking at distributing the vaccine honestly, not politically, and also opening up schools so we can focus on what's actually important.
And of course, by the end of summer is when we're hearing the Biden administration claims that as many as 300 million vaccines will have been given. So everyone who wants one should be able to get one by the end of summer. Do you think that's a feasible timeline?
No, I don't really believe anything a politician says when they say timelines. I mean, Biden changed his mind over a course of a day. So I think 2 days ago, he was saying by spring, every American or every American who should get it would get it. And then the next day, Jen Psaki was coming out and with her I'm going to circle back routine saying, oh, actually, it's probably going to be summer. So I don't really think the federal government or state government is capable of something like this. I think it's going to take a lot longer than really we would like. But let's also remember that America is doing very well compared to other countries. We're seeing a lot of damage and mess in Europe right now with the EU fighting over access to various vaccines. So I think we need to remain somewhat in perspective of the fact that the United States is doing very well with the quality vaccines that they produced. I just don't have a huge amount of confidence that Biden's going to hit any of these goals that he's coming down from on high and promising us all.
And with all the disgusting rhetoric that we've seen as well in a lot of these media op-eds about how older Americans, or they claim, are usually more white and wealthier, and so therefore they shouldn't get the vaccine first, and that they should be allowed to quote unquote die off. And so a lot of that rhetoric it's very dangerous what we're seeing from this so-called woke crowd that claims to be fighting for the little guy, and yet the first chance they get, they throw the little guy, in this case older Americans, under the bus. But before I let you go, you have a podcast, you have a Truth in 60 Seconds show as well. Can you tell our viewers where they can find you and your show to support?
Sure. So you can find me on YouTube if you search for the Ian House Show or The Truth in 60 Seconds. My most recent video is actually about Joe Biden's flip-flopping on promise in October that he would solve COVID for us all. And now the trajectory, there's nothing we can do about it. So I do weekly videos there. Please go check me out. And of course, on the Daily Wire, I write about this on a daily basis. So please go and check me out there as well.
Keep up the good work, Ian, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much.
And after the break, it's a day ending in Y, which means Joe Biden is lying again. We'll discuss his administrative appointees and their plans for tax hikes that he said were never going to happen. Next.